Warning, the following video has flashing lights and also includes content that may be deemed inappropriate for some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Ryan Tremblay, aka the Wendigo guy, and Mr. Prevo. Yes, two members of the Midnight Society science team have found their way into the darkness of the Fox Den for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy. Yeah, I am very parched and must feed. Absolutely delicious. And now, without further ado, let's get ready for Mr. Prevo and the Wendigo guy and myself to take a walk into the madness.
Stood up. I said, oh my god, it's a werewolf. And everybody in the car freaked out.
My creatures of the night, yes, once again, it is Midnight Lycanthropy time here on LordeStarfox Radio, and we have two members of my team and also scientists for the Midnight Society who have found their way through the darkness and into the Fox Den to sit down and ignite the late night fire as we burn a few of the stored up timber we have to stay warm and try and figure out what is occurring. Yes, with these strange sightings, footprints, missing people, and all of the above, we have Ryan Tremblay, aka the Wendigo guy. Ooh, you've heard that name before. Of course, he is a bi-weekly host. And we have Robert Prevo. Yes, you've definitely heard that name before again as well, because he is also a bi-weekly host. And yes, it is time to nerd out and deal with some science. Mr. Tremblay, how the heck are you doing, man?
I am doing great, man. I appreciate you summoning the Wendigo guy once again. Always a pleasure to be here.
Beautiful. I do appreciate you. And Robert, my guy, how the heck are you?
Behold, for I am here. Hey, I'm doing great, guys. I'm glad to hear that you guys are doing good, and it's awesome to be here yet again.
Of course. How's the wife, Robert?
He's doing great. She's doing great, working her butt off, doing all those things that I tell her to do. No, she doesn't do anything I tell her to do. She actually she hands out all the orders, and I just kind of, that's why I'm in here. She told me, hey, you have a podcast, go do it.
Well, tell her I said hello.
I will.
He's been dismissed. Well, that's fine, because I do enjoy knowledge. Anytime you are being dismissed, come right on over here and we will nerd out together for sure. And tonight, to the audience, because we have two beautiful minds here that are going to explode my mind, yes, we have some really interesting information to dive into. But first off, Ryan, what have you been up to in general with diving into what's going on? And Robert, right after, I'd love to hear what you've been up to too, man.
Oh, man, I got a lot of stuff on the horizon, Kenny. I'm just putting the finishing touches on my Wendigo book. And as I was explaining earlier, I'm reluctantly starting the book on the Yinaradushi, the Skinwalkers. And then after that book, I have various books I'll be writing about the various indigenous folklore and all the creatures held within that.
Fantastic. Well, me, Of course, I've got my podcast, Monsters the Podcast. It's going on. Matter of fact, Ryan and I are meeting up Sunday night to record an episode that has to do with devil monkeys. Yeah. Let's see. I've got the YouTube channel going, which is where we've got the podcast. I've got some new episodes that I'm working on of the field guide. Those should be coming out in the next couple of months. We're working on getting the membership thing going, and Animology 101 is going to be a series of videos on there, as well as I've got the first volume of Animology 101 getting ready to come out in about a month.
Wow.
So that'll be at Amazon. So, and then we've got investigations that are going on. We're busy. We're busy, guys.
Boom. Excellent on both sides of the equation right there. That's great stuff. And I feel you on being busy, because no complaints. It is what it is. You need to do what you got to do to get to where you want to. But I would say I spend the majority of my day editing, recruiting people, sleeping, and then spending time with my squirrel and / repeat. I totally, definitely understand. And, well, if you add in a wife or a girlfriend and other duties, then I could see how that could eat up a ton of your time, because I have no time, and I am a single male that does not really care about the moment of trying to confuse my mental aspect with any women at the moment. Been there, done that. Maybe something.
Wise man, very wise man.
But tonight, though, yes, Robert and Mr. Tremblay have been digging into a ton of stuff. So I am going to step back and throw the mic to Robert and let him and the Wendigo guy do some great knowledge dropping here.
Okay, so we were looking at and talking about decapitation, the lovely removal of the head from the rest of the body, and the way it relates to a lot of the Dogman stuff. When we look at generally where we're talking about this happening is when Dogman is suspected of taking part in cattle or pets, dogs, cats, things like that. A lot of people are coming across animals that have been, for lack of a better word, by, something that we suppose is Dogman. Matter of fact, just got a report out of, and I don't want to get this wrong, I want to say Alabama, it might have been Georgia. 3 dogs, young dogs, one was definitely decapitated. One was eviscerated, and then the last one that actually survived had huge claw marks down the rump. So I got that information from someone on a completely different group, but they actually were able to finally send me the photographs of the evidence, and it's pretty graphic. So they're suspecting possible Dogman involvement in that one. For some reason that keeps popping up with the decapitation, which makes me think, and I don't know about you, Ryan, but it makes me think of the Valley of the Headless Men.
Yes, I'm so glad you went with that, Robert. That's what I was thinking too, and not just the Nahanni Valley, but the Gugwi themselves. It's a type of Bigfoot that people are actually seeing, and according to the indigenous folklore, they were known as the face eaters. And the reason why they called them that is because where would they attack first? The face, and they remove the head of their victim. So, I mean, it's interesting that you say it's kind of put in the Dogman category, though, because that's a very primate behavior. When monkeys attack, the first thing they're going to attack, if they attacked you, they're going to attack your face. So it's a primate thing, and I'm kind of wondering where the canines would come in with that. I mean, hyenas, which aren't canines, attack the same way, but do wolves and things like that attack in a similar method, or...
Actually, they don't, and that's what led me down a rabbit hole that has got me thinking maybe we've got a whole lot of things wrong in some of this. And I've been traveling down this rabbit hole for quite a while now, pretty much all week. So you had me thinking the same thing, the exact same thing you were talking about. So I started looking at predators that we know. Coyotes generally bite the throat, and the wounds are usually to the shoulders, flanks, and the hindquarters. If you look at feral dogs, wild dogs, hyenas typically eat their prey while it's still alive, as gross as it possibly sounds. Lions do the exact same thing because they hunt as a pride. Anytime you have a group of predators that hunt together, that's what generally happens. You have one that holds it down, is working on it, and then the rest of them go ahead and they start eating. Bears bite, maul. There's usually a spinal break around the neck, and then the back, face, and nose are usually attacked, but no decapitation. Whenever we talk about decapitation, you are absolutely right that it is generally primates. Now, if we're looking at primates and we're looking at descriptive things that have to do with the Dogman, there is a primate that falls within most of the descriptive categories of the Dogman, except for size. And that is one that we've talked about before, and that is the baboon. The baboon and its relatives. Okay, so baboons, drills, and the other baboon-like, they're all within that same group. They usually live in packs or groups or clans, and one of the first things they do is they remove the head.
Yes.
So that's pretty telltale. And if you look at some of the bigger baboons, they actually have a mane. And so a lot of the stories you'll hear about Dogman is that it'll have this big bushy mane on the head. Well, we have some baboons that are like that, and they have big canids, or big canines, I should say. And they have, of course, hands that are very human-like. Now, what really sunk me, or really got me into buying this one, I thought, okay, so I'm going to start looking through at pictures of possible Dogman tracks. So looking at those, I thought, okay, let's compare them to baboons, just for the hell of it, just to see where we're at. They're almost spot on. They are almost spot on with baboon tracks, especially with the rear track. A lot of baboons have a rear foot that looks, its track anyway, appears to be very much like a canid's track or a hyena's track, but with a heel mark back at the back. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So it's kind of got me wondering if maybe what we were calling devil monkeys at one time aren't actually a form of the same species as Dogman. Something else that led me down this was I was watching one of, what is their name? Small Town Monsters. They had one of the videos about the Dogman, and I can't remember which one, but there was a lady who was talking about when she was a teenager, they would go down to where this road ended, and they would, hang out. It was her and her boyfriend and a girlfriend and his boyfriend. And as they were standing there, she saw something off on the side of the road, and it had red eyes, and it kind of hopped toward her. Well, we tend to think of kangaroos and bunnies when we think of hopping, but kangaroos, we had this big thing of the phantom kangaroos that happened back in the 70s and the 80s, and it actually happened in Arkansas too. We had a big to do about that. But if you look into the stories of the devil monkeys, some of the devil monkeys were very prone to hopping.
Yes, they were.
Yeah. Now, most of the devil monkey accounts will put them between 3 to 4 foot tall, but some of them have been much bigger than that. So I just kept going with the devil monkey thing, thinking, okay, what other connections do we have? Well, when you get into Hammerson Peters' video about devil monkeys, which you can, I encourage you to find his videos on YouTube and watch. Hammerson Peters has great stuff.
Yes, Hammerson Peters is top notch. He's top shelf when he does his videos.
He is the bomb. If I'm ever in doubt on something that's somewhat related to anything in Canada, I go straight to his stuff. Anyway, there's a story about one of the tribes up there, and I think it was the Atna, and they were trying to figure out what was going on with these people who were disappearing, and they knew it was what they call devil monkeys,
Mm-hmm.
or the satane. And there was a brave who went and basically followed the tracks and found where they were encamped, I guess you would say. But anyway, he saw some of the devil monkeys out there, and they had dug these holes in the side of the bank and had burrows where they lived, and they were playing with a brave's head.
Oh, that's nasty.
Yeah, they were kicking it around basically like a ball.
Boy, those devil monkeys really were getting ahead of themselves, weren't they?
Bump. Well, I'm afraid they might have dug a hole they couldn't get out of. So, anyway, horrible jokes aside. So anyway, here's two things that seem to tie in with the Dogman, and one is the decapitation, and the second is the burrows.
I got another one, actually. There's something about devil monkeys that people don't talk about too often for some odd reason. And Kenny, this is going to bring you into this conversation. So in 1873, in West Virginia, there was a train that actually had an accident and it tipped over, okay? According to the manifest of that train, some of its cargo was baboons. They were transporting baboons to a zoo. So 1873, think about that date for a minute. The first Dogman encounter happened just a few years after.
Exactly. Now, where was this train at again?
Virginia.
Very interesting that happened in Virginia.
Yeah, and 2 years later, a group of loggers happened to see the first Dogman. So it makes you wonder if there's something to that. And Kenny, I know you're listening, so what's your take on that?
Well, first off, great stuff by both of you right there. And as I'm sitting there just thinking about potentially what I'd like to say when I'm called upon, Robert's hammering off, no pun intended, hammers and Peters, and he's the man. And I've actually had a chance to speak to him a few times, and I really would love to collaborate with him. He's so busy, though, and he pretty much just doesn't have time, really, more or less. I mean, he responded and still responds to me, says that I'm doing great stuff. Huge kudos to that guy. And Trem, you were touching on some great stuff too, man, talking about like the devil monkeys. And the thing is, I agree with both of you. I'm glad others are listening to that, because yes, when you have the Gugwe, the devil monkeys, and the baboon like Dogman, I believe those are one and the same, more or less. And I've been trying to tell people for so long, if they're not familiar with what baboons look like, how massively werewolf like crazy they can be with their huge manes and teeth and the sounds they make. And also, if that was looking into someone's window that wasn't familiar with what a baboon looks like, and it's not in your area at the middle of the night, yeah, it's got hands, and some of them do have glowing eyes because they have to deal with leopards and things. I believe it's the yellow baboon that has nocturnal vision. And yeah, they're gnarly as heck, and I encourage anyone to go look at their behaviorisms. Also, I saw something pretty bizarrely disturbing, but it's part of learning about nature, I guess. This male baboon just literally reached over as this female had just finished, giving birth to her baby. She's holding it, and he just grabs it right into the face.
There's a reason for that, There's actually a biological reason for that. When they commit infanticide like that, it's to actually put the female back into estrus. It's to breed with her again.
Mm-hmm.
Messed up stuff. And also, I believe
cats will do the same thing. Sorry.
Right. And also, I believe one of you had said to, or someone else, numerous people, that there's a ton of nutrition also in soft tissue like that as well.
Yes.
So to us, it's like, what the heck? But to an animal, of course, eyeballs and tongues and brains and all the things that make me want to go barf on myself are probably pretty entertaining to, something that wants to dive into that. Again, I believe there are a lot of different things going on, and I loved how my science team, is able to say that, because again, I'm just a journalist. But also, there is a case down in Florida where there was like a 2-day war. So I'm not really sure how you call that a war, but either way, maybe a block war now. I mean, yes, this is back in the day, so they didn't really have city blocks. But either way, they're down in Florida, and these soldiers and also people at the marketplace would see this massive baboon the size of a human, which again, I do encourage everyone at different points in time and depending where you are originally from with your ancestors in the world, you're going to be at different heights, okay? These people that were saying it was the size of a man, okay, they could have been from France, or other areas where men aren't as tall now as they are. So I always say take it with a grain of salt when someone says the size of a human, because again, here in America, and we tend to grow a little bit more. So if someone's, in another country where they average maybe like in Indonesia under 6 feet or something, they're like, yes, it was the size of a man. Well, that's not saying it was a 6'6" baboon like here in America or something, you know what I mean? Where it's much more common to come across somebody like that. Either way, though, they said it was the size of a man. We're talking about something pretty decently in size, and it was coming into this market and raiding the fish and basically just terrorizing people. And the soldiers, were pretty much, after dealing with this 2-day little beef, we'll call it, then decided to go and look for this baboon because they also caught it stalking them at points in time. They were never able to dispose of it, but they did find where it was posted up more or less on the outskirts of town. It had gathered some old cotton bins and barrels and basically pulled it away into the forest and set up like a little nest. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff that points towards baboons and things being involved, which would specifically be outside of the canine realm. And that's what I try to tell everybody. Just because in Hollywood a werewolf is a canine, okay, we're not dealing with werewolves unless we're diving into the occult here, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the term dogman, okay? And there's so many different variants. I have the chart. I mean, you got your type 1, which looks like Helsing, or also potentially the howling. You have your type 2, which looks like a German shepherd. You have your type 3, which looks like a hyena. You have your type 4, which is the devil baboon looking dog man. Type 5, you have bear man, bearzilla. Then you have the coyote man, type 6. These are all listed as dogman. But how many of those did I just name that aren't related to canines? Bear man, hyena man, and also a baboon man, more or less. Okay, they're still involved in the whole dogman phenomenon, but people got to pump the brakes on always thinking a canine track is something that is the dogman, because baboon tracks are not canine tracks. Hyena tracks, same thing, and the same with bear tracks, right?
So yeah, one of the things too. Okay, let me interject one other thing. If you're interested in the devil monkey and what Tremblay was talking about with Virginia, in 1959, someone with the last name Boyd in Saltville, Virginia, had a run-in with a devil monkey. That same year, 2 nurses in Saltville had an encounter with a devil monkey, and I believe that devil monkey left scars down the side of the vehicle. In 1994, in Roanoke, Virginia, there was a interaction with a devil monkey, and in Kentucky, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio, it goes on and on and on. There's even, and I don't know how much research has been put into verifying this, but it's the DeRidder Road, I believe, which was in 1996, happened to Mullins on Highway 12. There are photos on the internet. Now, it has been argued back and forth whether those are actually a baboon, a dogman, a dog, whatever. The photos aren't too bad, but it's very hard to tell the accuracy of something like that through these kind of photographs. It was something on the side of the road, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. Another thing is, as scientists, we have to look, there's kind of a scientist and biologist version of, or cryptozoologist, I should say, version of Occam's razor, which the simplest answer 9 times out of 10 is right. Okay. So this is where a lot of people are going to throw rocks at me. So I'm going to just throw it out there. We have a tendency to try to take something that is basically a square peg and put it in a round hole, because we're trying to figure out how can something work specifically under these circumstances. And we've kind of done that with Dogman. Now, I'm not saying that Dogman of any variation cannot be a canid, but what we've been trying to do so far, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody else, and I'll still be guilty of this because I'm working through this. We have a tendency to try and take canids, which are quadrupedal, and try to figure out, okay, how could evolution work within this to make them bipedal, to take that front paw and give them a thumb and give them hands? How can we make it so that they stand up? What is causing that snapping, crunching sound? We do that, and we have to be careful that we're not doing a disservice to ourselves when there is an animal or a group of animals in the species who actually fit the bill quite well without having to try and manipulate evolution so that it works out. The term werewolf has always been used with Dogman primarily for two reasons. One, people see something and the first thing they think is that was a werewolf because it looks like a werewolf to them, and it's no disservice or putting down anybody. If I had seen it years ago, I would have been like, that's a freaking werewolf. But the second reason is because we do have a faction in cryptozoology and the paranormal who really have it for werewolves, and they just absolutely want werewolves to be a real thing. If you doubt me one bit, get on Facebook and start going through any of the groups and listen to people talk about or read people talking about how they can become a werewolf because they want to. There are people out there who are very unstable. So we have to be careful because there are creatures that are like baboons. There's this whole family of primates right here who, when you start going through and you break down the description of what people say that they saw with Dogman, and you don't put a bias to it, these baboons, they actually fit. And like I said, there may be other types like Kenny was talking about, all of the 6 different types. But there is also a possibility that people are misidentifying something. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Tremblay, go for it, brother.
Okay, so I'm going to tack on to what you were saying, how everybody calls these dogmen the werewolves. They also call them the skinwalkers, okay? And I'm trying to emphasize to everybody, the dogman / werewolf, whatever you're going to call them, are so separated from the Yinadalushi. They're not even close to being one and the same. So we really have to work at studying the folklore behind werewolves, behind skinwalkers, behind dogmen, and stop putting them all in the same category. Because again, we're doing a disservice to the whole cryptozoology. Okay, we're trying to answer one mystery with another, and then another, and then another. And it just doesn't work that way. We have to look for answers on each topic separately, individually, collate that information, see if there's anything similar, and then take what's different and part them all so they're all in their own category. So that's what I want to say. I'm going to get off my soapbox now, but stop calling them skinwalkers. So go ahead, Ken.
Amen, brother.
Great stuff right there by both of you as well, because I try my best to try and distinguish that and put down a little bit of an explanation to the differences. And well, I mean, what is that saying? You can lead a horse to water, or you can't make it drink. I'm not one on puns for usually, but yeah, I mean, you can put out the information and we can put out the information, but if people want to dive into other aspects and latch onto it, can't change that. And I mean, come on, I like creature features for sure. I mean, let's say I love them because my mom was into them. Werewolves are cool. At the end of the day, though, are we here, for science, or are we here for entertainment? And you can actually be entertained by knowledge. It just depends on if that's what you're about. And you both touched on a great topic too, with the whole evolution aspect. Well, canine's little digit on the back has been put out of use, and usually evolution doesn't go in reverse, okay, meaning that is no longer in use, and as we go more in the future it might even disappear, right? But with hyenas, they have an actual almost like thumb digit on the front of their paws, and their front paws are different than their back paws, which again right there is super interesting. And hyenas are one of the most unique animals in the world. They are related to mongoose and civets and ferrets, and they love to dig and also be in trees. If we're talking about anything here besides baboons that actually use trees, if we want to dive into the evolution aspect, well, hyenas have this usable thumb almost, and their ancestors were in trees. It's really not so far-fetched to think if it's been in your actual upbringing at some point in time through evolution, you wouldn't be opposed to go back up a tree or use it, you know?
True.
Exactly. That is true. And I won't dispute that. I would never dispute that. I think you've got really good points. And I'm not saying that there isn't this mysterious canid that has been out there and has developed, thumbs and being able to be upright and things like that. I know that sure sounds sarcastic, but I don't mean it that way. But, I'm not saying that doesn't exist. It's always a possibility, but when you travel the path of least resistance in looking at this, then you kind of start to flow along the whole, baboon or drill or whatever, what was it, Dinopithecus? You have
Yes.
you have all of those. So it's almost like you have an answer that is just staring you in the face, and you're just like, no, it can't be that. It's got to be this over here, and not to throw Jody under the bus at all, Mr. Jody Cook, but I believe on Monster Quest, he had found a skull that looks like a baboon's a baboon skull.
2006 Ohio, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I mean, you also got to take a look at the woo side of the Dogman, though. It's something that we can't really ignore, unfortunately. It's something that's so present. We do have to look at it every now and again.
Oh, I agree, 110%.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that may actually be a genetic memory that we have. Maybe these things have been hunting us for so long that, we're well aware of whenever we're being stared at by these things in the forest. And, it's just that part of us takes over where, we're aware that we're prey right then.
Mm-hmm.
And this thing that shouldn't exist, when you're confronted by something like that, you're going to feel completely out of place. You're going to feel like you're looking into evil whenever you're confronted by,
I know I did.
Into
that type too, the hyena. I know I definitely felt like, oh my God, you're not supposed to exist.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Savos lions, the ghost in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever the Zulu warriors went after the two lions, and then the two lions ended up escaping, they're like, nope, we're not going after them because they're not lions. These are the ghosts in the darkness, So there's, and of course they were just lions, but you have to be respectful to the way that people think and the way that people view things differently too. So I mean, there's a whole lot of aspects that you have to take into account when you're looking at this. But if you're looking at it from a strictly scientific, biological point of view, there's something that really does fit into this category pretty easy. And I would just wonder if we're not bypassing it in favor of something a little bit more romanticized.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that the fantasy of, werewolves being out there, I think it's just too much. It's too hard to resist, and people get attracted to it. Like, they're attracted to being scared. Okay. It's a rule of movies where if you want to make them cry, you got to make them laugh first. Or if you want to make them laugh, you got to scare them first, and it goes on with life too. All right. So people are more attracted to seeing the big, scary dogman, the werewolf that's tapping at their window, trying to break down their door. But in their minds, this is all real to them. But in reality, it might have been something different. It might have been a baboon pawing at their door, was at their window, and they created this romantic element to add fright to it and add this scare fest instead of actually focusing on facts.
Yeah, and I'm not even saying it's strictly an African baboon that has gotten loose. Mm-hmm. It's a possibility that we might have a subspecies or species of our own of baboons in North America that have gone unchecked, and maybe they're starting to pop up here and there. I don't know, we're still working on that.
That does seem like a possibility though, Robert, because you got to think, the Micmacs, they ran into the Gugwe, the Cree, the Ojibwe, they all ran into them too. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
how did these baboon-like creatures get here so long ago that the different tribes were seeing them, but then they fell off for a little bit? Nobody saw them, and all of a sudden, boom, massive resurgence of sightings, So there had to be a population way back in the day. Probably
Right.
prehistoric relics or whatever that existed. That's why they walked upright. That's why they're so huge. But eventually it segued into what we were seeing nowadays.
Yeah, and another thing we have to take into account, okay, if you look at the size of the biggest baboon in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
and you apply the biological rule that the farther north that you go, the larger this creature is going to become in species, and you get up into North America and you get into Canada, it's going to be huge.
Yes.
It's going to be huge. So yeah, monsters are real.
Yeah, they are. They definitely are. And some of the worst ones are humans, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Yeah, and it would figure that this one would possibly be a primate, because primates are not nice.
No, they can be real vicious, really, really vicious. There's been chimpanzee attacks. There's been
Oh yeah.
spider monkey attacks, gorillas. I mean, remember that chimpanzee case with the owner?
Yep.
The lady,
Yeah.
when he changed her hair, the chimpanzee didn't recognize her, and he attacked her and pretty much ripped her face off.
Yeah, there was the other one. What had happened in Texas or Ohio? I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, the chimpanzee had gone nuts and attacked the lady's best friend
Mm-hmm.
and basically tore her face off. Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah, so see the face eating, that's the first thing that primates tend to do, and that's because it makes it an easier. If your
Yeah.
prey doesn't have a face, they can't fight back. So
Yep.
there you go. It's one fell swoop. You got your prey ready to go like that.
Which fits in with a lot of the details of these attacks. They're supposedly Dogman.
Mm-hmm. It does, and it's almost ominous the way it fits together.
Yep.
So what do you think, Kenny?
Again, brilliant stuff right there by both of you, and I love seeping in the knowledge. And I actually definitely am on the side of believing that it's majority wise involved with baboons and hyenas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, until science can show me a little bit more as to what evolution would have caused a canine to just all of a sudden stand upright consistently, unless it lost its front arms or something. I mean, not saying it's not possible. And yeah, bears stand up. High probability people have seen bear man standing up. Yeah, I definitely am thinking along the lines of a lot more of the baboon or primate involved with hyenas. And I do know that one of my friends down in Texas got a call from one of his friends who she was very distraught and upset and claimed that she had hit a very large looking baboon with a mane. And he was like, wait, what? A baboon? She's like, yes, I hit a baboon. And he's like, no, you didn't hit a baboon. She's like, yes, I did. And she picked him up because she was pretty distraught. They went back in the spot where she said she had hit it. There was a huge blood smack spot, but it was no longer there. And also on the front of her truck, because it was like a Ford F-150. So, I mean, whatever it did hit probably didn't feel very nice, but it had some sort of bloodish on the front of it. Again, I wasn't there, he wasn't there, but why would she have said that she hit a baboon? It's just pretty interesting stuff. I mean, that's a very unique thing to describe. I mean, that's pretty hard to misidentify, right, Robert?
Yes.
Yep. I had one more thing I wanted to throw in there, having to do with the Dogman and possibly to do with these primates, theoretical primates. In a lot of accounts, in eyewitness accounts, in stories of interactions with Dogman, people will talk about when Dogman transitions from being a quadruped to a biped, this crunching sound, this sound almost like bones popping. I kind of wonder if this is not simply a defensive tactic that these things are actually making audibly with their mouth, where as they're standing up, they're making this crunching sound with their mouth, just like some monkeys will clack their teeth.
Ooh.
and do other sounds like that whenever they're trying to ward off something, whenever they're scared or they're getting ready to attack.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you also hear stories about these dogmen grinning at people. One of the big things that primates will do, and you have to be careful about this, is you never smile whenever you're around a primate and show your teeth, because that's one of the things that they do to show somebody that I'm not scared of you and I'm getting ready to kick your butt.
Mm-hmm. True.
So, there's all these little details that whenever you sum them up and you set them aside and you say, okay, who fits with this? Who fits with that? We keep coming back to the same answer. So I really wonder if that sound, though, is not simply a sound that they're making, with their mouth, with their teeth, or something like that, to kind of, I'm getting ready to attack, kind of like a rattlesnake rattles its tail.
A noise you'll never forget if you actually hear it in person. Let me tell you.
Yes, that is true.
Mm-hmm. Last thing you want to do is wake up a rattlesnake. They get angry really quickly.
Yeah. What do you think on that, Kenny? What do you think about the clacking of the teeth maybe being the bone sound?
That's really great stuff again by both of you. And my squirrel chatters the heck out of her teeth, and so do the other neighborhood squirrels that come over, and I feed them peanuts and stuff. Obviously, if they don't like the other one or something, yeah, they chatter their teeth, and it's a pretty distinct sound. It's like a consistent chatter, and I mean, they obviously make other vocalizations. Yeah, very interesting stuff for sure right there, because it's only in a few cases, though, I've heard that. The majority of the cases that I've heard haven't included that sound. But again, if you're in a car or if you're not focused on that, I don't know. I mean, people focus on different things. So
Mm-hmm.
potentially it might have happened if we're all in a boat,
The earlier encounters had that, Kenny. A lot of the encounters that Miss Linda Godfrey, rest in peace, chronicled and put in her books, a lot of them talked about the popping noise. So it was more common with the much older sightings, which always brings me back to my age-old question of how come the older, earlier sightings of Dogman are so different from what we're getting these days? Because when you read Linda's books, these things weren't ginormous. They were maybe 6 feet average. Now you talk to modern day witnesses, they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 feet tall, really muscular and super fast. That's not what it was like back when Linda was doing all this work. So it does make you question how come.
I think that's a great question, but potentially I feel as if now people are just going off of things that aren't verified, meaning that would explain all the changes. Because I mean, obviously that would expose people that really know who are the OGs. And I mean, if they were reading Linda's stuff, they would understand. But if they haven't and they're just going off of certain YouTube threads or certain larger names in the field, etc., they're going to be, influenced by that. And Robert, I want to hear your opinion too on that in just a second before we start coming to a closing here pretty soon. But also there was another case of a baboon where this guy loved it, thought it was super cool, and he would always smile at it and feed it and stuff. But that flaw right there, like you said, he smiled at it, even though he was thinking he was being nice, hitting the glass, giving it everything, and thought it was his buddy. Well, one day when that cage was unlocked, the only person it went after, and the first person it went after, was him. And it legit was just beating the Christmas trees out of him until they were able to break it up. And I mean, he ended up surviving. But yeah, apparently that whole time, even though he thought he was being nice, he was just legit like poking somebody in jail, man, just taunting him. So as soon as he got a chance to get out, he's like, "What, you think you're dominant? Nah, buddy, I'll show you who's dominant."
But as far as, like what Tremblay was talking about with the change in the description from whenever Miss Godfrey was recording and reporting all of that to the more modern accounts where, you have this, it's been to the gym far too often and it's, 8, 10, 12 foot tall, like you were talking about. I'm not saying that people are full of it outright. But there are people who, one, want their 15 minutes of fame. That's everywhere in everything. And then I work in the mental health field, so there are people that, you know, uh, believe certain things. And maybe they ran into something else. Maybe they didn't run into anything. Maybe there's something else going on with them. We've seen that all through cryptozoology, the paranormal, and ufology for years, where you have to take everything with a grain of salt. You have to be really careful as an investigator. There's nothing wrong with taking the report and investigating it. Where we have to be careful is whenever we take the report and we publicize it, because sometimes, and it's not about gatekeeping. It's not, because I'm definitely against gatekeeping as far as information goes. There's valuable information that needs to be put out there, but we have to be responsible enough to say, you know what, I think the person I just interviewed may not have their teas and their crackers even in the same room, that much less together. Because I've run into quite a few of them. And I'll run into a whole lot more. I hear Tremblay laughing his ass off in the background. But I mean, it's true. It's true. Because, you'll run into people who will tell you all of this stuff. And then they'll tell you about how, well, it ends up that, Dogman's my best friend or whatever. I'm not going to throw the guy under the bus by name or whatever, but I interviewed him and several other people interviewed him for podcasts, and it came to pass that he was lying to everybody. He got on several popular podcasts, and he talked about this female wolf person who, he called specifically by name. I won't even throw the name out there, and then this long, almost romanticized relationship with this creature. Supposed creature. So you've got to be careful what you're doing, and it's out there. That's just part of what we do. We're kind of like, we're detectives. We kind of do what the police do and everybody does. We go out there, we talk with people, we gather the information, we investigate, and sometimes there's something and sometimes there's nothing. Go for it, Tremblay.
Okay, so you were saying we're like detectives. Dude, I Batman somebody, okay? If somebody comes to me with a report, and it's a very detailed, very specific report, you trust and believe I am at my computer. I'm looking things up about these people to see if there's any mental illness, any arrests. I'm talking to friends and family, if I can get a hold of them, to see what their mental health is like. And if they check out, then I'm going to start taking their encounter much more seriously, because I've had people try to pass stuff up on me, and I'm like, you want me to believe that you have a friendly Wendigo that comes to join you for coffee every morning? Okay. Do I look like a gullet bull, let alone a gullet calf? Come on, man. No. So I'll look into the mental health. And there was another guy in this Dogman field. And Kenny, you might not know this one, but Robert, you might. He claimed his dad brought him a Dogman pup. And this pup grew up with him. And his grandfather forged a set of claws for this Dogman. This Dogman ended up protecting him from all these different monsters, man. The Rake, Skinwalkers, Gugweed, Bigfoot, even a Mothman at some point. So right there, you listen to a story like that and you're going, okay, what trauma did you go through where you're replacing whatever the person or animal was that was in your life, and you replace it with a Dogman? What's going on here? So there's a lot of stuff that people will try to pass up as real, legit cases, but they're lies. They're lies from their inception. They're lies when you look into it, and they're lies when they just go away.
Yep. We just have to be careful. And it's not knocking anybody for what they might have experienced, and we don't want to make it to where people don't want to report what they saw or what they experienced. I have no idea. You might run into one and experience what they call mind speak. You might have lost time. You might have seen a portal. I don't know. There's all kinds of weird things that happen in this universe. So we encourage you definitely to report the stuff, if not to us, to somebody else, so that gets on the books, and that it's information that we can look at, and then hopefully we can all come together and help one another. The thing is that we have to be careful about misinformation getting out there, because there is a ton of it. And once it gets thrown out there and people start believing it, it is like on their best friend to try and tell them that that did not happen.
Yep.
Again, beautiful stuff. And as we start to tie this up, because both of you have other things to attend to besides hanging out with us, but even though you are, so it's great stuff. I did just, again, want to touch on something that you both just described about how, again, people, they just have some of the worst descriptions. All right, I'm a nerd. I love to learn. And growing up, of course, what do a lot of boys like? Well, they like sharks, dinosaurs, and yeah, of course, I like them both, right? I've always had an intriguing aspect of learning about great whites because even though they scare the living Christmas trees out of me, they're probably my favorite shark, which doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Either way, if you look at all the goated great white of the past that were supposedly 35, 36, 37, they were all measured incorrectly, okay? But they are still massive sharks, but they were around 23, 24, maybe 25 feet, which is still a damn big gray white. We're not saying that, but that just shows you again of how A, people just don't describe things the best, and B, how things are kind of prefabricated a little bit as time goes on, not maybe on purpose, but just kind of, what is that fish game? Hey, someone caught this, the next thing you know, they're riding Free Willy, you know?
Yeah.
True. Very true. I don't know why, Kenny, but when you started talking about great whites, my mind instantly went to Jaws. I had that scene play out where they see the shark for the first time, and Hooper's like, that's a 20-footer.
Yeah, that look, right?
25.
Exactly.
All 3 tons of them.
All I was thinking is you're going to need a bigger boat.
Right?
We could rig you in, get a bigger boat.
And actually, again, as we're tying this up, that's a prime example right there of still being able to terrorize without prefabricating something. Okay, again, Jaws didn't go for the aspect of trying to necessarily be realistic, and to the aspect of success. Luckily, they are happy with the aspect that the shark messed up a lot of times and sunk, so they weren't really able to show Bruce as much as they wanted to, which actually was a positive thing because, I mean, when you look at those couple of traumatic scenes, especially at the beginning, you're only left to your imagination to understand, wait a second, what's happening right now? And I try to tell
the best
people,
way, though. That's the best way to tell a story. I mean, if you want somebody genuinely to be scared of something, you don't let them see it. I mean, a lot of movies played out along that line. You had Alien from Ridley Scott, and then you had the Blair Witch Project. You didn't see the monsters at first. You didn't see the witch in the Blair Witch Project, but it still scared the holy hell out of people.
Yes, exactly. Great stuff right there. And to the audience, if you ever do want real horror and you really want to be scared, there are plenty of real life mysteries of people just vanishing, true crimes, even people that survived strange encounters, like I've talked about before with my buddy from the Hoggot Project, where someone was in his camp decked out in military gear. That's on my thread. People can listen to it. Again, you want real life horror, look at some of the people that have been lost for weeks in the Amazon, true stories, or being attacked by things. It's out there, but if you actually want to learn things, just make sure you want to learn. Don't go into something with the aspect of buying whatever is being put in front of you. That's just not a good way to approach it. And is there anything else you two brilliant minds would like to touch base on before we let you get Boogie in?
Well, I just want to add that I think people really do need to look into the details. If what you're looking at as far as cryptids go has some kind of folklore to it, then don't be afraid to look into that folklore and scratch beneath the surface. Really, really look into it. Absorb the details. Absorb what the tribes say before labeling it as this, that, and the other thing. We got to learn how to separate all the different mysteries. Don't answer one mystery with another. So, and with that, I'm going to hand it off to Robert.
And I would say this. If you're listening to this and you think I'm just way off base, that's fine. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But what I want you to do is I want you to think. I want you to use critical thinking on your own. Take whatever information you can about Dogman, Bigfoot, whatever you're wanting to research into, break it down, and then just start looking at those aspects, that information, in a scientific way. And science is about method. It's not about anything else. Science is a method. So, a lot of people get wrapped up in science is this, science is that. Just use the scientific method. Just go through. It's critical thinking. You're going to go through and you're going to look and you're going to figure out what actually fits all of these different things. So if you think I'm completely wrong, that's fine. But then prove it. Go in there, do your due diligence. Don't be the armchair quarterback. Don't be the the keyboard warrior or whatever, and tell me about how awful I am and how wrong I am. Trust me, I have family for that. Yeah, go read some books. Go work on stuff, and be a better cryptozoologist than the three of us are. Go out there and be the next generation of cryptozoologists, paranormal researchers, ufologists, whatever it is, and make me proud. Prove me wrong.
There you go.
Brilliant by both of you. And to the audience, this will be the conclusion at the moment of the Midnight Society's meeting. But no worries. Yes, the Wendigo guy and Mr. Prevo both have their own podcast, which will be linked in the description. So you can keep up with, well, what they're doing outside of hanging out with myself and us. And they will both be back on very soon because they are bi-weekly hosts. And who knows, you might get both of them again at some point. So if you enjoy what we all do here, please give us a like. Because if you're subbed to us, well, you must like us for the most part, correct? Again, no pun intended. Hit that like because YouTube is just pretty much going to hate on us if we don't get proper amounts of likes. But again, thank you for both hanging out with us tonight.
Oh, my pleasure.
Absolutely my pleasure. And you can catch me and Tremblay on a episode of Monsters, the podcast. They'll be released here in a couple of weeks. We're actually meeting up on Sunday, and we're going to talk about something very similar. So it might be kind of a part 2 to what you're hearing right now. So check us out.
Oh, you legends, you, I do adore every single one of you. And thank you for stopping in tonight. Please like, comment, subscribe, and feed the algorithm. Remember, keep the head on a swivel. And there are monsters besides I that go bump in the night.